What's up, rockers? Welcome to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast, where we geek out on all things rock and roll. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Leave us your likes and comments. You can leave likes and comments also on our Facebook page and follow us on iTunes and Spotify. I'm Metal Dave Glessner, along with my co-host Jason McMaster, and today we're going to talk about the lost art of tape trading. And those of you that were around before the internet know exactly what I'm talking about. It was an underground sort of phenomenon, a network of sorts where you home recorded cassette tapes, licked a stamp, stuffed an envelope, and promoted your band or turned your friends onto unknown, unsigned, obscure bands. And it became an underground network of sorts. And it blossomed during the 80s. It became kind of a thing, and some major bands probably owe their initial exposure to tape trading, and we'll talk about all of that here in just a minute. But first I wanted to talk a little bit about this book. And Jason, I want to bring you in here because you're actually included in this book.
Good. Well, first off, how are you, Dave?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. I just wanted to get a hello in there before we start digging the hole that we always dig and talk louder, because this one's deep. I'm gonna have a lot of fun in this episode. I'm just warning everyone.
No, this is a good one, and
Yeah.
you have a lot of experience with our topic today, and yeah, and a lot of people may remember it, and those who don't remember tape trading are about to get an education. So stay tuned. But first, I wanted to talk about this book. It's called "The Decade That Rocked," and it's basically a photo. It's hefty. I want to call it like almost a coffee table book, and it is a collection of photos by a famous rock photographer who came to prominence in the 80s, hence the title, The Decade That Rocked. His name was Mark Wise, and Mark shot for a number of magazines and mainly Circus, Faces, Rip, and hundreds of others, overseas magazines. And he did it at a time during the 80s when you actually traveled with the bands, you actually had them come to your studio, you partied with the bands, you had VIP access. So his access was incredible. So he's taking some of the most memorable shots that you've ever seen in Circus Magazine, Hit Parade, or Rip, those sorts of things. And he also did a number of album covers, not the least of which is the Twisted Sister Stay Hungry cover. And everyone knows that iconic photo of Dee Snider clutching that bone, looking like a cornered rat. That is a Mark Wise photograph. And so, anyway, the book is really cool. Not only is it all about photos, but Mark goes year by year through the decade and sort of summarizes what he was doing during that time. And for me as a journalist, it's really cool. He's basically the photographer version of what I do. And it's really cool to sort of watch his ride. You know, he got in on the ground level. He hit when the action was hot, and he made a lot of money and did some incredible things. And the book is just full of all these photos. Not There's also, this is why I wanted to bring Jason in. You're featured in that book. For those who don't know, the back cover photo on the first Dangerous Toys record was shot by Mark Wise. So I was going to ask you, what do you remember about that photo shoot and working with Mark?
I always thought that Mark was you had Mark on the East Coast and you had Neil Zlozauer on the West Coast. I mean, Mark was uh, the guy that was popular for doing the East. You said Twisted Sister. He did Slippery When Wet for Bon Jovi, and it goes and goes and goes. He also shot Kicks and all of the Cinderella and all that East Coast stuff. As to where Neil and Mark were busy, and they're not the only photographers in the game.
Sure.
Whether it be late 70s on through the entire 80s as well as into the 90s. But working with Mark was great. I knew he was a famous photographer, but I didn't know his roster of clients at the time when we worked with him, because it was literally 33 years ago that he took that back cover for the first Toys record.
Yeah.
but he was really easy to work with, and he would say the same about us. And he is still a buddy to this day. I mean, I have him. I have his number on my phone. He's super fun guy, and he's just the guy that you would want to call when you needed a photograph done.
Yeah.
Um, and he got in good with the labels and all the magazines because he would probably send samples, you know, to all the magazines and and end up being hired, whether it be on like a staff, photographer at certain labels and magazines, or I really think that him and Neil were more like free
For,
free reign. Yeah, they didn't really have one. I don't think that they really did any contract work. So
I think the book says that at one point Mark was a staff photographer at Circus Magazine, and
that would make sense.
that was sort of his foot in the door. But you're right. Most of his shots were sort of on a freelance basis, and he just became the go-to guy at a time when bands were very visual. It was the advent of MTV. It was sort of 80s metal was a very visual medium, and he became kind of this go-to guy. And like I said, I was almost envious reading his story because it's like I wish I kind of got into the writing game around the same time. That was a bit before my time. I was a reader at that time, not a writer. But he kind of got in on the ground level at a time when the scene was really flourishing and made a name for himself, and then became trusted by the bands and had a reputation, like you said, as just an easygoing guy who was uh, literally like the fly on the wall. You didn't even know he was there, and he was capturing these great shots.
He wanted to. He says candidly that he loved rock and roll. He loves rock and roll. He wanted to be hanging. He wanted to hang out. He wanted to meet and hang out with the bands, not different than any other concert going rock and roll fan.
Yeah,
His eyes and the way that he thought was he wanted to capture that for memory's sake. And I don't really know his whole backstory, but he used to sneak into Madison Square Garden and take pictures. He used to sneak in the theaters on the all over the East Coast and take pictures, and he'd try to sell them in the parking lot for $1 and get in trouble for it.
that's
And
correct.
him getting in trouble for it is probably what, hey, this guy was out in the parking lot selling these photos, and Gene Simmons sees one and goes, "Hey, bring that guy back here. I want to give him some money."
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
exactly right. That's
pretty
exactly.
much a long story short.
No, that's exactly right. The book starts with him talking about as a
Yeah.
kid, he was sneaking cameras into the arena to shoot Kiss and actually got arrested for selling his prints in the parking lot and did a night in jail. And then all those years later, he was, all access with the laminate in the photo pit, hired by Kiss to shoot their professional promo photos and their live shots and that sort of thing. And that's what I'm saying. He was obviously a fan first. He found his foot in the door, and he just ran with it and made the most of it. It's a great book. It's called The Decade That Rocked. Real quick, what do you remember about that photo shoot? Because it's an interesting shot of of Dangerous Toys. You're
He,
kind of out on a
yeah,
it's like you're on a
yeah. It was.
barnyard or
I think
something.
there was a. I think there was a phone call with him with one of us. It could have been me. I don't remember the phone call, but I recall some kind of conversation like, well, do you know any cool places we could go shoot? And I said, because at the time I was living in Sunset Valley, which is right there, just in Austin, just south of uh, uh, Stasny,
Yeah.
right? No, we
Sounds
no Westlake,
Westgate.
Westgate. Thank you.
Westgate. Yeah.
And like Jones Road goes through
Yeah.
Sunset Valley right there,
Yeah.
and by the old I forgot what it's called now, but there's a football stadium there.
The Burger Center.
Burger Center, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Well, back then, in ye olden times, in 87, 88, Burger Center was kind of, it was a considered deep South Austin. It wasn't as, that shopping center and all that wasn't there yet on Brody.
Right.
Not quite. There was some stuff there, but not what it is now.
Yeah.
And there also was less development closer up to like the fence line or property line of what Burger Center was, and there was some old like horse stables there that were run down, dilapidated, like rotten wood, and there's an old like a stable fence, that was about 4 or 5 boards high that you had to climb up on to see sit on top like the cowboys and root and toot for it was old,
Yeah.
super old, but I think that there was some kind of little stable there, or even if it was just, some guy had a small family had a little, uh, you know, couple of cows or something,
Yeah.
and it sold off the property, and that was what was left over. Anyway, it was still there at the time. It's not there anymore, but it was on the north side of the stadium, the
Yeah.
Burger Center. It was on the north side before there's a street that kind of backs up to where that gas station is there on the corner of 290 and Westgate. There's a
Yeah.
gas station, then there's a
Yeah.
strip mall, and then you go further back. It's down there close to 290 is where this sort of burnt out barn stable kind of thing was. And I just said, well, there's a place right up the street that kind of screams old school cowboy southern Texas vibe. uh and if you want to just us to wear leather jackets and sit on a fence and lean on a tree, this is barbed wire and whatever. He
Yeah.
was like, that sounds perfect. And that was the first place we shot. And I think that we went downtown and we took some other photos in some alleyways and stuff. And we tried other things, but he ended up using that stuff from the old burned out barn there in Sunset Valley.
Wow. I pass by there probably once a week, and I had no idea that's where that location was.
Yeah, I was living with Eric Hubner's uncle, as well as Eric and a bunch of other crazies like Danny Aaron, the guitar our guitar player at the time, was living there with us.
Yeah.
And that was on Lone Oak, which is literally across Jones Road in that neighborhood right there. And it was like, it could have been 6 blocks of a kind of a walk from from where we were all living at the time.
Well, I think it's really cool that you're part of this book. I've always loved that photo of you guys on the back. I feel like it sort of captures the spirit of Dangerous Toys. And
Thanks. The photo in the book, I don't have the book. This is kind of shameless of me to say, but I'm still waiting on my copy of the book to show up. It's an expensive book. I don't have the extra cash right now. Otherwise, I'd just go get it because it's
it,
fucking amazing.
yeah, it's really good.
It's amazing. But the photo of the toys in the book, we're in the locker room at, I'm going to get this wrong. It's not like Madison Square Garden. It's not in Nassau, but it's in his neck of the woods. It might even be in New Jersey. Oh, it's the Meadowlands.
Oh, I see. I didn't see that photo. The only one
It's
I saw was the back cover of the Toys record.
No, there's a photo in there
Ah, okay.
of me jumping in the air like David Lee Roth splits in the air. It's terrible. I mean, I get my legs like this far apart, and the other I'm in midair. My hair's all because I'm in midair, and the other guys are just standing there, and it's in like the shower stall at the Meadowlands where, I don't know, the Knicks. I'm not sports
Oh,
guy, you
wow,
know.
wow.
I swear it's in there. Yeah, you'll have to thumb through it and
I'll have
find
to
it.
look through it more closely. The one that caught my eye was the one I'm familiar with, of course, being on the back of the album
Yeah,
cover.
everyone knows that. That was
Yeah,
actually, they used that as a promo shot and everything.
yeah,
They burnt that one out. So it's killer. We all look great in the photo.
yeah.
If I don't
Great photo. It's a
I don't
great
mind saying.
And
saying
I
that.
so now everyone knows the history behind it. It's a great book. It's called The Decade That Rocked by Mark Wise, Weiss. They call him Wise Guy. And
I have to say this. We've talked about this on Talk Louder before, that Mark took us all to Bon Jovi Skid Row the same night, because the same day that that photo was taken, that night Bon Jovi and Skid Row played the Irwin Center downtown Austin, Texas.
yeah, there's an interesting story again. I don't want to go too long on this book, but he's actually uh, responsible, or so he says in the book, for bringing Sebastian Bach into Skid Row. And
Yeah.
that's an interesting story. But see, this is what I'm talking about. This book is all about his involvement in the scene. And because he was so ingrained and entrenched in the scene, he was making connections and building relationships. And a guy knew a guy. And the next thing you know, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
And
I'm sure it was something like he saw uh what were they called?
Madam
Madam
X.
X.
Yeah.
Yeah, he saw Baz with Madam X, probably near his house at a club, Jersey,
Yeah.
north side of New York or
He
something. Who
also,
knows?
he also,
And said and probably fell in love with Baz and was like, dude, you're crazy, you're awesome. Photos, photos,
yeah,
photos. And then
yeah,
all of a sudden his buddies in Tom River, Jersey are going, dude, we need a singer. Oh,
right.
I know the perfect guy.
Yeah.
Rest is history, because Sebastian's Canadian.
Yeah, and along the same lines, Mark Wise is also big time responsible for getting Zach Wild into Ozzy Osbourne's
That
band.
is correct.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
is
we could do a
correct.
whole episode on this book. It's really interesting if you're a fan of '80s rock and metal, or just photography, rock photography. Highly recommend it. The
Well,
shot
now we have to have Mark on the podcast. That's all
to
there is
do
to it.
that.
We
Yeah.
just do a big thing on his book and have Mark Weiss on
Well,
the
you said
podcast.
you have his phone number. Give him a ring after this
Yeah,
episode.
yeah, I'm gonna text him.
And with that, let's move on to our main topic. All right, today we are talking about what I described earlier as the lost art of tape trading. And I say that because it's not very prominent anymore, because technology has sort of surpassed it. But back in the day, there was a time when you could make home recordings on cassette tapes. And if you were in a band, it was your way of getting your music to a wider audience. If you were a fan, it was a way of you sharing your local heroes with your friends in another state, that sort of thing. It was kind of an underground network. Not kind of, it did. It became an underground network where people recorded cassette tapes at home, licked a stamp, put them in an envelope, and sent them around the country. And it became such a thing that you would start reading ads in the back of fanzines, and bands on the East Coast would be aware of bands on the West Coast because of this tape trading phenomenon. And
I
Jake,
want to interrupt and
yeah, no,
say
I was
you
going to
you,
just
you
hand you the
mentioned
floor
you
for
mentioned fanzines, and fanzines are part of this episode.
yeah,
So we just did our episode on rock and roll magazines, and that was an excellent sort of forum on all of that stuff. But it kind of started somewhere. It started somewhere in the underground, that those were the high dollar glossy magazines
yeah,
of the 70s and 80s.
yeah,
Well, we're talking about the underground, and now the biggest band in the world will tell you that because of tape trading and fanzines, they will, yeah, they will be. I can't. That just looks like a white piece of paper,
too
Dave.
much glare.
Yeah, I
It
can't.
is a
What is it?
copy. It's a reissue of Metallica's demo, the No Life Till Leather thing.
Nice.
From
So, so I want to talk about just my experience at home with
yeah,
the idea of, okay, you got a dude in a band. The dude is me.
yeah,
Um, when you think about recording your rehearsal, you have some kind of boom box, right?
yeah,
You're recording, you're putting like scotch tape over the holes
yeah,
on a cassette tape, you know.
yeah,
You're,
yeah. I
so
remember.
this is a tape that that already has this is a tape you bought at Radio Shack or whatever to record your music on, right?
Right.
Hey, so so let's say you found a tape on the ground or in the garage or something that let's say you didn't have a clean cassette tape to record on, and it already, so when you bought your the new whatever album on cassette, it doesn't have the tabs in it. They're already broken out, and what those tabs do is keep you from recording over it,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because a lot of boom boxes and cassette players had record options, like you said.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you find the Tiffany tape, you steal it out of your sister's room. I don't have sisters, but whatever. You and you need a tape. This will work. This will piss her off, and I don't care. She ate my sandwich last night. So you put a piece of tape over over where the tabs used to be, and
Yep.
it's ready to record. And you put it in your tape player recorder, and you press play, and you say, "All right, go," and and you count off, and you play a couple songs, and if it comes out really good, this was a way that you could turn your friends at school onto your band.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is a huge explosion of footprint
Yeah.
you are starting to have in your scene.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the step up would be you record a demo on a buddy's got a 4-track, like a mini studio that's a step up from having to play live into a boombox recording. You can mic up your drums, and you and the drummer and the bass player can play the songs without the guitars and without the vocals, and then the guitar player and the vocalist will dub their parts over, and you have separation and a little bit better sound quality. Okay, well, you get a tape deck and you come out of that with some cables into another tape deck, and one's a player and one's a recorder now, and you have an assembly line. You're mass producing this sometimes quite shitty sounding demo of 3 or 4 songs of your band.
Yeah.
There's very little money involved. You're stealing more of your sister's lame pop music to record over.
Yeah.
And you're giving you're handwriting, you're drawing your logo on these tapes.
And your
So
ad.
it doesn't say Tiffany anymore.
Yeah.
And you're giving these pieces of art, one of a kind cassette tapes, out to your friends at the keg party you played last weekend. Eventually, if there's a club in town that'll have your heavy metal band play, because that was a problem growing up too, is the teen center all the time wouldn't really let your satanic thrash metal band play at the teen center. There's a mushroom and a horse and a gerbil painted on the wall with butterflies and stuff. The teen center. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah. Yeah.
that was a scene thing. Eventually they did, because they would have the youth camp counselor. He would be like 20,
Yeah.
22, and understand yeah, man, y'all can do that. I got the keys to the castle now.
Yeah.
Just a scenario.
Yeah.
But it's not, you're in high school. This is real now. You have footprint in your scene. This is how this is building. This is how tape trading is sort of born. It's
Yeah.
how the first like demos of some of the bands that you hear on the radio every day started.
Yeah.
And I'm really talking about Metallica. I'm talking about probably Van Halen. I'm talking about it. It's endless. It's
Yeah.
endless. I mean, this is the genesis of the whole thing.
I think, it's kind of interesting to me, and I have a theory. It's interesting to me that it's almost exclusive, maybe not exclusive, but majority owned by the punk and metal scene. And I think it's
Yeah.
because that type of music wasn't getting picked up by labels and had no other form of mass exposure. So it's back to the DIY ethic,
Thank you.
where
This
it's like,
is this is this we could even call this episode DIY, because
yeah,
it's exactly the way that you um if you were in a band, this was the way you got started. And eventually, when your recordings got better, if you got better microphones and your buddy had an in at a studio out of college, and he was going to be graded by his professor to record this teenage heavy metal band, and the recordings came out pretty good, that was just called using your resources. That
Yeah.
was just called learning how to not have to spend a bunch of money on studio time to get a decent recording of your earliest material,
Right.
right?
Right.
um so, did you have any friends that exactly what I just vomited? Did you hear? Did you have any friends that exact scenario was happening to?
Yeah. So first, I want to make another point before I talk about my someone I know. So you described um, from a band perspective, and I also wanted to make it clear that it was kind of the advent of home recording that allowed this. And from a consumer
Yes.
standpoint, you're talking about a 4 track. You're talking about gear. You're talking about what musicians use. I'm going
Well,
back.
it was the very, very like early stages of like someone who was nerdy enough to it was funny how it was usually the guitar player that ended up getting a 4-track recorder because he asked for it for a Christmas present
Yeah.
or something.
So
And
that so
then if that guitar player was in a band and learned how to use it, you were off to the races.
right.
Yeah.
And so that was the band people, and then the point I wanted to make was that even just the average listener or the average Joe or the rock and roll fan or whatever, because boom boxes and home cassette recorders became so prominent, I mean, I remember as a kid even taping songs off the radio and sending them to friends or trading with kids on the school bus. It was kind of the mixtape sort of deal. But it all sort of blossomed from the advent of home recording technology, whether it was more professional in the respect that you're talking about, or even if it was just consumer oriented, like what I'm talking about. The first guy that I remember that had sort of what you're talking about, and this is late '80s, early '90s, so it's kind of on the tail end of the tape trading thing.
That's okay. That's
But,
okay.
the guy that I remember is a guy that you'll know, Terry Anderson, who sang for Judgmental out of San Antonio. I used to work with him, and he would bring these demo tapes that he made in his bedroom, and I remember distinctly he came in one day to work, and he said, "Dude, check this out," and it was a demo of him doing the Wasp song "I Want to Be Somebody," and I was like, "Wow, that's
Rad.
cool, dude! You did that in your bedroom?" And he was like, "Yeah, that's like a I don't know, 4 track recorder or something like that."
So let me get this, because I did this actually with Armored Saint songs.
Yeah,
He, which would have been about 84, 85. He, get this straight. So scenario, do you know that it was he like recording the audio from the Wasp record or cassette or whatever into a stereo input on his 4-track and then cutting his vocal on top of it? Question mark.
the to me, the way I recall, and if Terry listens to this, he'll have to correct us, but
Yeah.
the way
Well,
I
he'll
recall it,
comment. Yeah.
the song was not that perfect. So what I'm thinking is he had a band and somebody laid down a guitar track and
Oh,
some
good.
they
Oh,
they
okay. So they covered it. They did a
yeah.
cover in his bedroom. His band played it. Okay. Well,
Or even he
that's
did it by himself, I don't know, but I remember him singing the vocal, and it was just the light bulb moment for me was, "Oh my
yeah.
god, you can do all this in your bedroom on this little machine," you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was, like I said, that was probably mid to late '80s, so it
Right.
was kind of on the not it was more towards the end than the beginning of the whole
When
tape trading phenomenon, but
when
he
you
was
think
still there.
about like a home recording gizmo, like a
Yeah.
4-track Porta Studio, Fostex, Tascam, those were popular brand names, and they're still around as far as I know. So, um, I don't even know how much one of these cost in the 80s, but I would imagine it was kind of a little bit of a chunk for a
Yeah.
teenage punk to have one of those. That
Yeah.
rhymed,
Yeah.
chunk and
Punk
punk.
for a
Okay,
punk.
so um, you know, uh, I remember Jeff Tweedy. I was roomies with Jeff Tweedy, and he had a 4-track, and I remember putting in. This would have been about 80, around the same time, 84, 85. I was going to say these little gadgets that I'm talking about, the home studio 4-track recorder. Um, I don't know the history of those. I don't know when those started popping up. I started noticing them about 83,
Yeah.
but certainly they were probably some version of that was probably around, God, late 70s, 79, 80,
Yeah.
because of our this episode, because of the reason that we're talking about this stuff. So, okay, this is funny. I put in uh on, because on 2 tracks, because I wanted it to be stereo. I put in I can't remember the name of the song right now, but it was off of March of the Saint, Armored Saint, March of the Saint. uh I know the lyrics still. Here was a picture of the old, blinded by haze. In the days I pick myself up off the ground. I know love is the man. Take a door. I can't remember the song title. I
Take a
can't
turn.
remember the song title, but
Is it take
Armored
a
Saint
turn?
fans know the song. What?
Is it take a turn?
It is.
Yeah. There you
See, I
go.
didn't sing it that terribly. You at least recognized it. Okay,
Well,
so
it's slowly coming to me as you were
yeah, so
saying.
I plugged in a mic and I sang along with it and recorded it. And guess what? I sent it to John Bush. I, I sent it to him
That's
so,
awesome.
just for the hell of it.
And what did he say?
And
What was his response?
he loved it. And I even like later on when they came back through like a second time, because I had met him, on their first tour on that. It was Ride the Lightning, March of the Saint, Wasp. We talk about that legendary show. It
Yep.
would have been early '85. Um, I he's like, hey, how's it going? Cool, cool, cool. And then he's like, I overheard saying, how do you know this guy? Da 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 da. Oh man, pen pals. He sent me, dude, it's cool. This guy sent me a tape of him singing an Armored Saint song off of 4-track, and da 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 da. We go back a little bit, da 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 da. So I knew that he knew about it, and he didn't tell me, dude, don't send me that shit anymore. He didn't. He wouldn't. He's too kind.
Yeah.
Um, Real quick, got a fact checker here from our the infamous Jared Tuten here, our producer.
Producer.
But it doesn't give a date, Jared. Is this a link? Porta Studio, Wikipedia, Tascam. Oh, 79. I said 79. Thank you,
Yep.
Jared.
Yeah.
79 is when that shit started happening.
So
Okay.
the whole thing is born out of the ability for a consumer or a musician to buy something and bring it home and start laying down tracks.
So you could write a song
Yeah.
or produce audio and multi-track and overdub, which was I think that Buddy Holly and Ray Charles and people like that were already messing with like having two reel to reels
Yeah.
set up next to each other, and they record like a guitar track and a drum track played live or something, and they record that onto another machine. No, and then they press record on the second machine and press play on the tracks they just recorded, and while it's recording what you recorded just a minute ago, you're playing, while the second machine is in record, you're playing the bass and singing the vocal.
Right.
So it's recording pre-recorded stuff as well as your secondary live.
You're
So
basically,
that's the earliest overdubbing there was, is something like that. So
yeah.
guess what you did after that? So you have 4 instruments on this machine now. You went back to the first machine, rewound the tape, and recorded over the first tracks you recorded,
It opened up 4 more tracks,
and
right?
added, and you just kept doing that. You just kept doing that until you had all your instruments recorded, even
Yeah,
though you only had like a stereo input, like a left and a right, a left side and a right side.
yeah,
Pretty cool and innovative, and they figured out how to put that in a box, like a lunch box, by
yeah.
79 apparently. Okay, so let's move on.
So
So
ta you've
so
talked
so
about
you
capturing the sounds. Let's talk about the network.
so hold on a second. You mentioned Mixtape.
Yeah,
So Igniter has a record out called Mixtape 85, and it's
yeah,
it's all these recordings of our favorite songs that not are not limited to 85, but it might have been prior. No, it doesn't even matter. We just called it 85 because a lot of the songs were either pre 85 or even right after 85. It just was a good ringing title. But, we did an Anthrax song, a Venom song, an Exodus song, a Priest song, a Purple song, etc.,
Raven,
because of the vibe. And it was just a fun covers album.
and the
But
cover
when
is
you say,
awesome.
yeah, and when you say mixtape, it was like a greatest hits compilation of your favorite stuff that you were making for a buddy at school that you
Exactly,
were going to give to for nothing the next day because they were going, well, I've never heard of them. What do they sound like? I'll make you a mixtape.
right,
And this was something you didn't have to go to the store to buy because you had all the records already.
right.
You had the boom box that hit record. You had the cable that went in there, or you just stuck your press record and stuck your boom box up against the speaker to your Mickey Mouse turntable.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember making tapes like that, and I remember, like I said, I remember recording songs off the radio, and of course, you always got the DJ intro and outro, which was a bummer, but, what do you want? I mean, you're basically recording off the radio, but the more important thing was, it was a way by which you shared music and turned people on to stuff that you were digging, and in a lot of
Yes.
cases, um it was stuff that wasn't going to get exposure otherwise because it was
Right.
unsigned, bands, it was underground bands, it was your older brother's garage band, that sort of thing, and that's where they, like you said, got their footprint. But then the other part of this is the trading aspect of the whole phenomenon, and that's where you're, putting it in an envelope and sending it across the country or sending it to a fanzine, hoping someone will review it. And there's yet another audience for this tape that was, basically recorded in a garage somewhere.
This is my cue. So I went through a lot of my old fanzines, and they're from all over the world. I have them from Germany and Brazil and Missouri and Chile and Florida,
Which
and
one's from Missouri?
I'll tell you, it's Terminal Rage.
Awesome.
Costs $1.50.
Sweet.
The band has Limb on the back, hand
Awesome.
drawn. Everything's hand drawn. Logos. It's old typewriter shit. It's
Beautiful.
done on a Xerox machine. I've gone through a bunch of these and dated them. This is Terminal Rage, the Midwest's only hardcore thrash metal magazine. $1.50. This is issue number 4. It says the Beav goes hardcore. It's got Beaver Cleaver and it's got Sylvester the Cat on there. Total random fun stuff. I
Yeah.
remember making Watchtower flyers with the most random, just cutout stuff. It was like ransom note
Yeah.
art, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So get this, it's interviews with Dark Angel XL, At War, Attitude Adjustment, plus COC, The Brood, Merciless Sin, album and demo reviews and more. Let's go ahead and take this out. This is from Missouri.
Yeah.
Like
Demo
it's got a
review. In
so
fact, has a
this is
section
a
on demo review.
Motorhead, live the tradition or die every Sunday at 2 p.m. KCFV FM 89 on St. Louis only real heavy metal outlet. This was like this, it says 85. So this was a heavy metal radio show
Probably a pirate.
called Metal Mania, right?
Yeah.
And I opened the back cover and it's just comic books. There's a Raw Power ad. like from Italy, the hardcore band Raw Power,
Yeah.
an Attitude Adjustment on the same page, a San Francisco Bay Area, punk rock band, Vacant Grave. Here you go. Vacant Grave adds 75 cents for postage, official death metal merchandise. Send check or money order to Vacant Grave, care of Sue Huber. I won't read the address. Manchester, Missouri. Demo shot, live shot, exploding bass. Please request the type of button or pictures. Demo 86, 4 studio tracks, 9 live tracks, $3. T-shirts, one-sided, $5. Two-sided, $10. That was pricey back then.
That's
This
great,
is
man.
actually, this is this. It says 85. This might have been a 86 or something.
Yeah,
Buttons, 3 types, $2. This is the kind of stuff that you could not wait to receive in the mail when you were a kid. So
sure.
here's an at war interview, demo destruction, Excel demo, Cyrenax from Austin, Texas, 1985. And it gives mom's home address as the contact.
I was going to say the fact that there's a demo review section
Yes,
that
there's
tells
demo review section. So this
that's
is this
exactly
is
what we're
the
talking about.
yeah, this is what we're talking about. So
Yeah,
demo destruction. I'm holding up to the camera as the
perfect.
title, and there's only like 5 demos reviewed. One's an '86 demo. I was right. This is from '86. Most of it's see 86 demo. More ads for the same radio station. Ultimate Revenge Combat Tour live VHS ad, right?
Yeah,
Whether Combat bought this ad or not. It says the VHS you couldn't renting wasn't. I mean, I guess renting was a big deal as in '86, but you can buy the VHS tape for $29.95.
yeah,
That's kind of a lot.
yeah. That is
86.
that is.
Anyway, it keeps on going. Raging record reviews, St. Vitus, Venom, Anthrax spreading the disease, so that makes it timely there.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, this is the kind of stuff. This is what, yeah, and it gives a lists of other fans' demo collections that you could trade with.
right.
This is the real reason behind the fanzines. Another thing is we headbangers stole this idea, borrowed this idea from the punk rockers.
Yeah,
So the punk rockers
yeah,
would put crash pad addresses and phone numbers in here. If you were Black Flag and you were quite popular in the underground punk scene, you hoped that they would call you and stay at your house
yeah,
so they could just destroy your mom's house.
yeah.
Here's one from 86, 87 as well, from Massachusetts and New Hampshire, Boston's metal fanzine. It's called Screaming Skull,
I
and
heard
it's
of
got
that.
it's got lists and ads, and it once again all hand drawn Xerox.
Yeah,
This is one they're more of the same. I've got some that are like this one's from Brazil, 1985, called Rock Brigade. Of course, it's in Portuguese, but it's got Raven and a bunch of stuff that I recall, but couldn't tell you how what they sounded. It has Merciful Fate, Man of War, Tyson Dog, Accept, Killer, Raven has Slayer, Exciter, Battle Axe, Loudness, Sabotage, Tank, and of course Metallica.
so let me ask you, what are some bands that you discovered through tape trading that number one, either you became a fan of, or number two, maybe you didn't necessarily become a fan of, but they became widely known and you first heard of them through tape trading?
Probably Nasty Savage.
Ah,
Now,
okay.
Nasty Savage was much like the punk rock labels, the garage labels, the punk rock bands, the punk rock. Usually punk rock bands would record their own songs on their own equipment, purchased or stolen, and they would They would get the two boom boxes or the two decks, and they'd make their own copies. And sometimes they would buy or steal their own Xerox machine and make the covers themselves.
Yeah.
They would do that with t-shirts. This is a product all of this. It's all DIY. The tape trading thing is basically, to be specific, bands and fans alike are doing the same. They have either a collection of, if you're a band, you have all your available demos because you probably couldn't afford to press it to vinyl. You probably had different demos, and you might be making demo tapes and just calling them demo tapes because of the quality you're forced to use because you don't have a rich dad or
Right.
something, right?
Right.
Um, so you just kept on calling them demos. But in the tape trading thing, fanzines would have lists of fans and bands catalogs,
Yeah.
and it says, to get a tape, a two-sided tape, you would send $5 to this address, and you would lick a stamp
Yeah.
and hope that it made it.
Now that we're having this discussion, I grew up in San Antonio, and I remember cassette slash demo tapes, whatever you want to call it, early releases by Valkyrie, Morbid Termination,
Yep.
Fourth Reich, Scythe, Alienation, Judgmental. I remember those cassettes, and they were hand drawn graphics on the cover,
And all
typewritten.
and all available for purchase at Hog Wild Records.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or they would be shipping them off to one
Yeah.
of these fanzines that you're holding in your lap, hoping
Yeah.
someone would review it. Yeah,
Now
another stage
as
cover.
things got a little more, progressive is a bad word for it, but um, you could mass produce. You could hire someone to mass produce and actually print your logo on the cassette. And I
Yeah,
believe those were the ones that were accepted by uh,
promoters and bookers and that sort of.
distribution companies, and, well, I was going to say record stores and distribution companies that did that for you.
Yeah. And they also helped you get in the door at clubs because it looked a little more professional.
Well, and after a while, a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, that's what you as a fan that's in tape trading is listening to. Oh man, I got it, but man, the songs, it's all hiss. I
Yeah.
hear the song, but it's all hiss because of the mass generation.
So Watchtower would have been around at the time when tape trading was a big deal. So how active were you guys in pushing your
Uh,
early songs via tape
so
trading?
I remember, you know, the stories I was telling a while ago about, I knew some guys who had a 4 track, and none of us had anything like that yet. And this would have been as early as 83, 84, maybe 83. So our first, like, throw at, our hardest throw at original material, we went over to this buddy's house and, recorded our songs on a 4 track. And I remember licking stamps and shoving these, you know, second, third, fourth, fifth generation cassette tapes of that earliest Watchtower material, and sending them to fanzines for review. Sometimes I would have received a letter from the fanzine. Hey, we heard about you guys, and we heard it's amazing, and we want to hear it, and da 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 da. So it's kind of like, the egg and the chicken, right?
Yeah.
Which came first, kind of thing. It doesn't even matter. It's the same thing. They're hearing about you through someone else went on tour or played some gigs or saw you guys or got one of your tapes and brought it back to Florida, whatever. But I was going to say, Nasty Savage, they had their own fanzine, which is what I was talking about. Like Minor Threat probably had their own fanzine. I don't know what it was, but like all those punk rock bands probably had their own fanzines, and Nasty Savage's fanzine was called Guillotine. And this is costs $1 for Guillotine, and this is issue number 1. So this is 83, 84, and the reason I can tell if they don't even have a date in here, but I can tell by the reviews and the show reviews and what they're talking about in here. And this is autographed.
By Nasty.
Yeah, they gave me this. It has everybody in the band in on the inside autographed. The first time they came through Texas, Militia was opening. Uh, they were on Metal Blade. They got a deal quick. I remember that, and they I think they were on one of the Metal Massacres actually before they were given their full album deal,
Yeah.
and they they signed this for me and gave it to me, and it's all about they love Watchtower. It says it's this is Nasty Ronnie. He says Watchtower kicks fucking ass. Nasty fucking Ronnie, my brother of metal till the day I die. This
Yeah.
means the world to me. This kind
Sure.
of shit.
Yeah.
And I've got some of it got rain damaged over the years, but I've got a hefty stack of some really awesome things.
Let me
Some
ask
of them.
you
Go
also,
ahead.
let me ask you this. So in your tape trading endeavors with Watchtower, what was the what was this? Tell me about a time when you got some feedback from some far-flung region that you were just shocked that your tape made it into the hands of somebody way off into the distance. Was there ever an experience where you found out that one of your tapes made it somewhere where you weren't expecting?
Well, like I said a second ago, sometimes I would get letters from South America and Germany asking for demo tapes or when's the record coming out. If you send me one, I'll review it, and I can't wait. I heard one song from a friend of mine who's a tape trader, blah 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 blah, and this is all handwritten in a letter on the back of a kick-ass flyer that you didn't have in your collection.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win-win-win-win-win as a fan. Same guy standing there who's in a band,
Yeah.
right?
So
A lot of these, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I was gonna, and I don't mean to jump ahead, but I was gonna ask you, do you think it's fair to say because this tape trading was so focused on the punk and metal scenes, is it fair to say that the big four probably gained their initial audience through tape trading? I know the Metallica tape was became a sought after collector's item for this
Yeah.
very reason. But would you say the same is probably true with Anthrax, Slayer, and Megadeth?
So the Big Four is a great hub to start with because Metallica is a Los Angeles band who moved to San Francisco so they could have the right bass player.
Right.
During that era of Metallica and the growth only of a very, very short time. I mean, they were formed in 81, Hit the Lights, a somewhat terrible recording of Hit the Lights was on a Metal Massacre record, Metal Massacre 1, I believe. And was a 5-piece band,
Yeah.
and the growth just quickly into like 82, they're already in San Francisco with Cliff Burton from Trauma on bass. They're already gaining so much momentum because they worked on it every day. And it was not short of probably Mustaine and Lars and everybody really just so into it. It was probably Lars. He's kind of the management brain when you kind of think about it. He was probably on the phone every day. He was making that shit work.
Yeah.
He was the determined one. And um as far as I know, right?
Yeah. I
Uh,
think that's pretty
uh,
widely.
yeah. I mean, Mustaine had a lot of energy, but we know what happened to him in the Metallica camp. So,
Yeah.
but he had a lot of energy because he was management brained because uh look what he did.
Yeah.
Like immediately after, he was like, "Ta-da! I didn't die. I'm here." Right?
Yeah.
And now Megadeth is arguably as they're a contender,
They're
and
sure.
for real, yeah,
Yeah.
not going anywhere. Okay, so they're in San Francisco. This is all relative to what you're talking about, Big Four. So
Yeah.
during this time in San Francisco, Johnny Z on the East Coast has a record store, probably has some kind of fanzine or newsletter via his record store and bands and stuff like that. starts a Gets an idea to start up a record label, and one of the first bands he ever signed was this band from California called Metallica, because he obviously had wanted, like Lars or whoever's, dubbing cassettes, sent one to Johnny Z, as well as hundreds of other fanzines, radio stations, blah, 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 with a phone number on it. Johnny Z, dude, this shit kicks ass. Calls Lars, hey, dude, I'm starting up a record label, blah, 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 blah. I'm shocked that I don't know how it didn't, like Brian Slagle, who also had a fanzine. Let me hold his up again. This is Brian Slagle's fanzine, the Heavy Metal Review.
Yeah.
This is issue number 8. This is April of 1982. So Metallica was on Metal Massacre 1, and you could order Metal Massacre 1 through this fanzine. So Metal Blade Records was brand new right here. Why Lars and Brian didn't start up Metallica after the Metal Massacre record came out, I don't know why. They moved to San Francisco, they sent stuff out, da da da. Johnny Z had some kind of magic wand that made those guys want to sign with this new label, Megaforce, in
Yeah.
New Jersey or something, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Meanwhile, Johnny Z's like, dude, I got this tape of these kids, Metallica, from, you got to come hear this. So they're all hanging around in the record store, and young Scott Ian talks about it in his book. I'm the man, I'm sure. Johnny Z hits play, you're gonna freak out.
Yeah.
And young Scott Ian goes, holy shit, jealous. How can I be? I want to be, you know what I mean? So Metallica starts doing all this awesome stuff. Metallica comes out to New York, sleeps in Anthrax's jam room, uses their gear to practice for the record. It's Mustaine, it's everybody, right?
Yeah.
So you can imagine what's going through Anthrax dudes' heads. Oh man, these guys are all, they were cohort. It was like brothers from other mothers.
Yeah.
So this is happening. So meanwhile, Brian Slagle had Slayer.
Yeah.
There it is. Mustaine leaves Metallica. You fill in the blanks.
Right.
Goes back to California. I don't know if he goes to San Francisco or Los Angeles. Probably Los Angeles. Maybe he went to San Francisco to get his stuff. Maybe he had stuff in San Francisco, but he ended up back in LA and had to start Megadeth.
Yeah. So probably
You're
fair to
you're you're
say,
exactly right. All of this tape trading spawned the Big Four.
yeah.
Among everything
Right.
else, which is
Sure.
how Testament came to be, and either whether it be within their own scene, like here's Los Angeles with Brian Slagle and Slayer is on a Metal Massacre record, da 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 da. Well, guess what? I have a real label now, Slayer. You're going to be on it. Show No Mercy, Haunting the Chapel, Hell Awaits, boom, major record deal after that.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because I think you could say, stemming off of the conversation we just had about the big four, that music wasn't marketable at that time. And because of the grassroots
I,
networking
yeah,
and
I love where you're going right now.
you know what I'm saying? It
Yes,
ended up because, well, I mean, anybody paying attention to this show knows the ending of that story, but those
right.
bands obviously became huge and well known and internationally successful. And you could say the same to a lesser degree of some of the bands you mentioned, Testament, even Possessed, Exodus, Dark Angel, all these bands.
It goes and goes and goes. Is when you're
Yeah,
talking, true metal, thrash
yeah.
metal and that whole thing.
And it
But
became viable. It's at some
oh
point it
yeah,
became viable because you couldn't ignore it anymore.
right,
But it started with somebody licking a stamp.
right.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
I feel like another version of the thrash metal scene, the underground metal scene. I feel like just another version was happening in those selected, big fish in a little pond, which is what the Slayer story kind of is. But you know, Rat and Dawkins and shit, Tesla and Cinderella over on the East Coast, and it's the same story.
Yeah,
They're
you're right.
tape trading, they're playing gigs, they're getting in as many newspaper articles and fanzines, types of fanzines as they can. Sure, it might have been a couple of years later, but I guarantee in the same years that all these thrash bands are working the underground and working the Europe, because Europe is a big player in all of this as well,
Yeah,
because this kind of heavy metal is bigger in Europe than it is in America.
yeah. Yeah, we're kind of focused here on the bands in the scene that sort of um succeeded, I guess, out of the tape trading
Correct.
phenomenon. But you know, Motley Crue is another one. Their first tape is one of the most sought after collector's items, and they went on to be a different style of music. But again, in Poison, you could say the same thing. You could say just what you were saying. A lot of the Hollywood Sunset Strip bands kind of got noticed initially because of tape trading.
Yeah, I don't know if Cinderella had to leave, you know, Pennsylvania to get a record deal or not. Maybe they did, but I know Poison uprooted from Pennsylvania and went to LA.
Yeah,
And they made it happen in LA. They became the biggest Sunset Strip. They were the phenomenon out there.
true,
They pulled what I call a Van Halen.
true.
Unstoppable. You can't all they were always the party, blah 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 blah. You could say Motley Crue, same thing. That was the stuff of legend, what was happening out there to bands who worked hard and partied hard and made people end up coming out and seeing them play,
Yeah.
whether their record deal was an agreement made on a golf course, or whether someone heard holy moly and went to a club and saw them. I'm signing you right now, because that I'm sure that happened a couple times too.
Right. And back in the day, of course, we have to keep in mind that we're talking about the time that we're talking about. Handing out a demo tape almost became synonymous with handing out a flyer because the technology
Thank
was
you.
available to you, right?
That's right.
So
That's
if
right.
you're so in the case of the Sunset Strip bands, they're walking up and down Sunset Strip handing out flyers
And demo tapes.
and demo tapes, and the thrash metal scene, they developed an audience in Europe because Europe is kind of hungry for that sort of music. But each of those scenes, in their own respective way, got started from cassette tapes that
Yes.
somebody on some primitive level either recorded in a garage or
Yes.
a home studio of some sorts, whatever passed for a home studio back then.
Yes.
But yeah, it's you can't overstate the importance of the cassette tape in the early to mid 80s if you were a band or a fan trying to expose.
This is where I want to just kind of underline this thing. If you go to like Ross Dress for Less or Walmart or uh, uh, there's a bunch of them. I can't think of all of the names of these like sort of aftermarket clothing stores.
Yeah,
Um, where it's probably sweatshop, prints, and like it's not
it's off-brand bootleg kind of stuff is what you're getting at.
right, but mass produced, right?
Yeah,
Here's a T-shirt with a giraffe on it. You know what? Okay, so Target, same, all that. Where you go? Hey, I'm gonna go look at the T-shirts just to look at the pop art, right?
Yeah.
Now, how many times have you seen in JCPenney or Sears or some crappy department store type shit where there's a black t-shirt or some fake faux faded, stonewash looking jersey t-shirt made to look like a 70s rock concert shirt that has a screen print of just a random cassette tape on it?
Yeah. It's
And
nostalgia
why?
because it's
This
nostalgic.
this this is
Yeah.
why.
Yeah. You do realize we just lost all hope of getting a J.C. Penney sponsorship.
Well, they're dead, and they're dead as a doornail anyway. I don't know,
But I know what you're saying. That the cassette tape has almost become an iconic symbol of a time gone by that is now once again hip and
I,
cool and that
I
sort of thing.
mean, I mean, it's ridiculous. I have a new project that's we're pretty much finished up, and it's kind of in the hands of the artist. It's in production, right? And I'm reading a thread between the guitar player and the label guy, and he's going to do 100 cassettes.
Yeah.
And in my chair, I'm leaning back, going, "What?
Well,
Really?" And they
so
think that there's some kind of underground market still for people who want to have that for the keepsake.
yeah, which is why Metallica re-released this all those years ago. I know it's got cellophane on it, so you can't really see it. But our friend Mike Gupta gave me this as a gift one time.
Oh, cool.
Metallica reissued or reprinted some
Yeah,
version of their No Life Till Leather cassette
yeah.
tape.
I used to have an original, like probably 1/10 millionth generation copy of No Life Till Leather. I don't have it anymore. I'm missing so much stuff. But I mean, I had that in 1985.
So here's the final note I had to myself, and you just touched on it. So we live in an age when vinyl has been making a comeback, and you're starting to see, just like you said, you got a guy who wants to, produce a couple hundred cassette tapes of something.
Yeah.
So, is there any potential for tape trading to become a thing again?
I don't think so, because the electronic press kit is too easy. You can share an audio file and a little bit of information about what it is you have going on and who's in the band and everything with a freaking email.
Yeah,
So
good point.
the the joy of having a good mail haul from walking the glory walk out to your mailbox, those days are kind of over unless you're a vinyl collector or a vinyl trader, or just because you know you,
So
you see
there
what I'm saying.
there is some potential for the cassette to make a comeback as a viable format, but the idea of trading tapes to expose bands to a new audience is probably dead because
Yeah,
it,
I think that it's archaic. Oh man, I don't have a cassette player. Why do I want that? But dude, there's some like dudes that are geekier than we are
yeah,
who
I
have
mean,
cassette players in every vehicle they own.
it wasn't too long ago I could tell you I didn't even have a turntable,
Right.
So turntables, I had one all those years when I was growing up as a kid.
Yeah.
And then there was a period in my adulthood where I didn't have one, and now I've got one again because they've kind of made a comeback. They're more widely available than they were, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and I'm enjoying revisiting my vinyl. But I think you're right, as a networking opportunity, as a networking sort of promotional phenomenon, cassette tapes are the tape trading that we're talking about here on this episode is probably over. Although I could see cassettes coming back as a viable format for consumers and collectors and nerds. And that,
It's probably a fairly inexpensive promotional item. Like if you're
yeah,
trying to tell somebody about your band, and the style of your music is, well, it wouldn't even matter what style of music. Just as an attractive, you rip open the envelope and you pull this out, and an editor or at a magazine or a newspaper, or you're a record label or a radio station. There might be a thumb drive inside the cassette. I
Yeah.
got a I ordered some stuff the other day, and I got a thing from, it was Disc Makers, which they do pulp for. They press your vinyl, they press your CDs. They're that kind of a company,
Yeah.
and they were trying to sell me a cassette that, if you pull, it's like a switchblade, and it's a thumb drive
Yeah.
that
Awesome.
that you push. It's like, so you plug it into your computer, and you have this cassette tape sticking out. I was like, well, that's cute. That's
Yeah.
cute. But that's all it is cute. So that's what I mean. It's probably, the cool thing is on a thumb drive, you can have your whole album, all the press, photographs, and even a video.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's going to kill any sort of like archaic format.
Yeah. Definitely not going to make a widespread resurgence, but possibly a comeback of sorts on a collector's type level, I
So
guess.
here's the irony here. So bands, when they're starting out, and they're kids basically, and they're licking stamps, as I like to call it. They're handwriting letters on the backs of their flyers, which makes it cool if you're writing someone in Germany or Australia or Mexico or Canada or Norway or whatever, because someone over there via a fanzine or a tape trader tells you they like your band, and they want, you should probably send them some stuff.
Yeah.
So you throw in some stickers and a cassette tape of your latest demo or your only demo, and you're giving your music away. Now, in the same breath, you have a show tonight, and you're taking a box of 30 cassettes that you stayed up all night burning, right?
Yeah.
That are in real time. It's not like you put it on fast forward, they have to play real time. That's
Right.
why demos only have a couple of songs on them, because you have to each one takes 10 or 15 minutes to burn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fast forward, you're at the show, you're giving the tapes out, you're throwing them off the stage, you're handing them to the dude at the show who says he has a fanzine and he just saw you for the first time and wants to review the show, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
This is happening. The guy that's giving his music away is the same guy that went up against Napster a million years later.
Yeah. I the I'm glad you brought this up because earlier in our conversation I was
I'm
gonna
not mad at it, because I see money now that I would have never ever seen if it wasn't for, so if it wasn't Lars, it would have been somebody else. But hey,
yeah.
don't give my music away. That's my intellectual property, man.
I was going to
You know,
bring that up when we were talking about the Big Four earlier. At the same point, kind of ironic how, Metallica's initial exposure was based on, tape trading, which was basically word of mouth and handing over cassettes and free this and free that. And then he became the guy that fought Napster. And I, in hindsight, I think he was right, but
of course.
I find it ironic that his band got their foot in the door through this free exchange of music, and then he became sort of the poster boy for fighting against that.
So it's not any different than someone bootlegging that shirt you're wearing, and that's your friend's band, and you
Yeah,
see someone out there with a box of t-shirts selling them on the street, and you don't know this person. And like, well, how do you know Houston? How do you know Mike? How do you know these guys? Who's that? You want to buy a shirt?
yeah,
See what I'm saying?
yeah,
It's the same thing. So
yeah,
it doesn't matter what level it is. It costs money to print a shirt, even if it costs you 50 cents, because your t-shirts where you bought them at the Goodwill, turned them inside out and printed your band name on the inside and
yeah.
sold it for $2.
Yeah, on the inside is that cassette print you were just talking about.
Right.
Yeah,
So the cassette is iconic as an image.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that it's a cool promo item for record store day or cassette day or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think that without it, we wouldn't have what we have today. It would have taken longer for us to have what we have today.
Yeah. It was
Um,
definitely a stepping stone to more advanced technology, more
I mean,
widespread
the
distribution, that sort of thing.
these fanzines and like I'll just I mean this was happening worldwide. This was global phenomenon, not just where we're comfortable talking about it. This was happening everywhere.
Yeah.
But I want to throw this out between the two, the East Coast and the West Coast. East Coast is Johnny Z, West Coast is Brian Slagle. Whether Johnny Z had I don't know the name of his fanzine, but I want to say he had something going on, just like Brian Slagle did, where both of them were interviewing bands, following bands around, writing about their favorite bands, tape trading, compiling lists of other tape traders collections and promoting those lists over and over and over, as well as burning cassette tapes and printing lists of other fanzines and other tape traders. Just this complete maniacal, I can't keep up type of a thing
Yeah.
is the reason that we're even talking about this. So
Yeah.
when you take those two guys, which deserve like I'm not worthy's
Big true.
trophies,
Yeah.
they need some kind of award of some kind. I don't know if there's
Talk louder
a
coffee mug.
talk louder coffee. That's a pretty lame award, but
Hey,
it's
hey, we're on a budget here.
that's right. That's right. So, we could just build some paper mache badass dude trophies. Here,
Yeah.
I'd like to present the badass dude trophy to Brian Slagle. And here's another one. I know this one looks a little dilapidated. Dave made this one. Here you go. Brian Slagle,
Yeah.
the Talk Louder Badass Dude Awards, but we'd be making 1,000 of them because there's dudes like that all over the place that made it happen in all kinds of music, not just metal.
Yeah. Yeah. But I do think that it was an interesting phenomenon during the time that it was at its peak, and I think there's a lot of bands that we all listen to today that would agree that they owe their first initial exposure to a wider audience besides the local club. Uh,
Right.
their initial exposure beyond their zip code probably came via a cassette tape if they were a band around at a certain time.
Here's something interesting that I want to add is let's say it's 1985 and you have a band and you have songs and you record a demo and you have like a 4-song demo that's very sought after in the underground tape trading system, and you sell a bunch of them and it's highly popular, but it never quite made it to vinyl because you broke up and went to college.
Yeah,
So fast forward 25 years later, 30 years later, that demo tape is still a bad motherfucker to a lot of people, and it made their misspent youth and their bad boy years at right out of high school, those summers in the 80s would not have been the same without that demo from your band.
yeah,
Now one of those guys has like a a garage record label that reissues stuff like that.
yeah,
Hey, you guys got any live recordings? Cool. Hey, you got some those later demos that were kind of terrible that you did later on that no one liked after you had to break up the band and reform it because so and so went to college. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, we got all that shit. Well, let me remaster the shit out of that, make a full length record, and finally put it on vinyl. That happens every day now.
yeah, yeah. If you sit around, if you're around long enough, everything comes full circle. That's kind of why I was touching on the idea of tape trading. Does it have any potential to come back? And as a marketing tool and a promotional tool, probably not. But as a nostalgia type thing for collectors, I don't see why not. Everyone thought vinyl was dead 30 years ago, and it's probably selling better today than it has since, 75 or 78 or something like that.
Sure. And sometimes those bands get back together and get invited to go play the German heavy metal festivals.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. Happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's crazy, right?
It is.
This is all a community type of a thing that we're talking about
Yeah.
that goes far from whoever it is just burning a tape or a box of tapes and licking stamps and sending them out worldwide. And in return, they get tapes of their favorite bands or other bands, or a letter back with a copy of the magazine with a review of your demo in it,
Yeah.
which is exactly what all this is.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm in like 90% of these magazines, and I kept them for that reason.
yeah,
Other than there's some great collectible shit right here.
yeah, for
I
sure.
don't think any of those go past 87.
That's amazing. I mean, they say music is the universal language, and people will always find a way to get it out there and push it and promote it and share it and fall in love with it because, let's face it, the whole tape trading thing started because somebody somewhere wanted you to like what they like. And their way of sharing it with you was by sending you a cassette, and we all still do that to this day, one way or another.
It's the same way. First day of school, looking for the guy wearing a heavy metal concert T-shirt.
Right.
That's your new friend.
That's my friend. Yeah.
No matter what, that's
Exactly.
your new friend. You don't even have to say words.
Yeah.
That's your new friend.
Exactly.
So this is the same. Yeah, it goes with what you just said. And the tape trading thing spawned what we love today. It spawned a podcast.
Yeah. Hey, it's
Mhm.
fun to podcast.
Yeah,
This has been great. I've enjoyed
yeah.
this topic. So much of what you and I listen to, because of our age and because of the time that we were fans and the time that in your case you started a band. This is all very relevant to us, and it's relevant to people that came along later because they might not be aware of the grassroots, initiatives that sort of helped spawn an industry. And that's kind of where we are today. On that note, let's wrap up tape trading, move on to our shot of rock and roll. All right, today's shot of rock and roll is from me to you, Jason. I know you're a big fan of John Bush. That's no secret. So I'm going to ask you to pick your favorite Armored Saint record.
You know, they're still making music,
Yep.
and it's pretty much the original band.
New album's called
Um,
Punching the Sky.
I'm sorry,
The new album's called Punching the Sky. Is that correct?
been out about a year now. Actually,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
they made a bunch of videos.
So they've done
They
12
sound as
albums.
good as ever. So
They've got a catalog now of 12 albums. If you had to pick one, which one would you say is your favorite?
well, I'm going to be brutally honest. They're one of the bands that I kind of like. They're one of my. It's like I claim them.
I know
Hey,
this.
you can't like Armored Saint. That's my band. That's like that. No, don't pet my dog. That's my dog. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, Yet I still wanted everybody. I wanted them to succeed, and I really think that they're such a dynamite band. And anyone who goes and sees them live walks away going, "Man, I just got violated. I
Yeah.
just got my ass kicked."
Yeah.
Right? Because they bring it. um Symbol of Salvation is a great record. That's like early 90s, 90 91. I
91.
was in the studio, visited them in the studio when they're recording that. That's Dave Jordan produced that one. Honestly, Dave, it's a fight between Delirious Nomad and March of the Saint.
Ah, okay.
And the first EP holds strong as well.
Yeah.
So, them going from Metal Blade EP, I don't know, 5 songs. I can't remember what's on there. False Alarm.
Yeah.
Uh, that's the one that was on a Metal Massacre as well.
Yeah. I think
Uh,
Paul Anthony played that in San Antonio on the
yeah, yeah.
late. Yeah.
They got a deal with Chrysalis,
Right.
and the only other band that I knew that was on Chrysalis was UFO, and then of course Michael Schenker,
Yeah.
who that's kind of the same breath, isn't it? So,
Right. Right.
um, and that was short lived. I don't know if Delirious Nomad was on that or not, but I just don't remember. Anyway, they ended back up on Metal Blade,
Right.
and they're great. But I think I'm just gonna go with March of the Saint. It's just easy. It's like comfort food. It's just
Yeah.
easier for me to just say, "Damn it."
It's tough to deny that record. I mean, it's
It,
really solid.
it's
And
well rounded, and they sound young and hungry, and it's a little polished sounding when you compared it to like Ride the Lightning or something.
yeah,
You
but
know,
in a good way. It's like
yeah,
I don't think the polish diminished any of the energy or the attack. It was just
yeah,
more professional sounding, maybe.
yeah,
And that album, yeah, I'd have to agree with you on that. And I've always been a little sympathetic towards Symbol of Salvation. I thought that was a great record, um, put out at a difficult time in the band's career.
yeah.
And the song Rain of Fire and Last Train Home, both of those songs are just John Bush at his finest. But you could say that about John Bush all day long, great
Yeah,
song.
I like the title track from that
Yeah,
record as well.
yeah. All right,
Um,
March of the Saint. I think March of the Saint's going to take the edge. It's got the title track, it's got the classic "Can You Deliver," and it has the song you were singing to us earlier. Take
if
it.
you were gonna, yeah, if you were gonna throw, the moniker or the phrase "one hit wonder," you would have to go with March of the Saint because "Can You Deliver" is still a fan favorite.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, there's tons of them. There's
right.
tons of fan favorites if you go that route, but "Can You Deliver" is like the introduction to. It's kind of like if someone didn't have anything before British Steel and they saw the Living After Midnight and the Breaking the Law videos and they go, oh, man, there's this new band, Judas, not new,
Yeah.
kind of a thing.
Can you
Well,
deliver is the song you play for someone that you're trying to get to like Armored Saint. It's like, hey, dude, I want you to hear this band called Armored Saint. Just give me
yeah,
5 minutes to play you one song, and
yeah,
you'll
maybe it might depend on what that rock fan might be into it already,
yeah,
age group wise.
yeah. I
Like
mean,
it might be a smart move to play them the newest stuff. Punching the Sky might
yeah.
be.
It depends on the individual, but if you're going after just maybe the casual metal fan who never heard of Armored Saint before, I think "Can You Deliver" is gonna make them ask you to play another song as
Oh
well.
yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. So I have a little bit of show and tell, if you
All
don't
right,
mind.
let's do it.
So on an older episode of Talk Louder, we talked about a lot of different things, and I remember it was probably in our ACDC Power Up episode, which was early.
Mm,
We talked about, and I've mentioned Rose Tattoo, Aussie rock, right?
yeah,
Um, Rose Tattoo and that Phil Rudd were actually in a band. I'm sorry, Gordy Leach and Angry Anderson from Rose Tattoo were in a band with Phil Rudd from AC/DC called Buster Brown.
yeah.
Well, my friend Michael Board from Minnesota sent me this. This
What?
I am holding up Buster Brown vinyl,
Wow.
which had to have been 72, 73. The record is called Something to Say. It's funny. It's got they've got they've got full stacks all the way across the stage. You can't really see it. And there's Angry. I'm not quite sure if the photo is in the same era as the recording of the record. May not be because the hairstyle looks different, but the
Phil,
stage doesn't. The stage looks rather shallow, and there's a disco ball dead center above the drum kit. There's a disco ball, so they're playing the dance hall,
right.
they're playing the gymnasium at their high school or something.
So Phil Rudd's on that record?
Yeah, so here's the back cover, and listeners can't see, but dead center is the picture is of the band photo. There's like six lads here,
Yeah.
and that's dead center. That's Phil. That's
Yep.
Phil Rudd. With they're all wearing these ridiculous bell bottoms.
Yeah.
All six lads, and they just look crazy. They look like they're on their way to prison.
And half
But
of them probably were.
you see Angry sitting. They're in a junkyard, sitting on an old ratted out station wagon of sorts. And you
Yep.
see Angry sitting there, and he just looked. I mean, he's a tiny fella anyway, but you can really tell how tiny he is by
Yeah.
them putting him up there because his legs just look like stumps. And that's not his
Wow.
fault. He's a powerhouse of a rock and roll frontman, and everybody knows that because Rose Tattoo is legend.
For sure.
But anyway, I just wanted to
That's
talk
awesome.
about this for a second. My buddy Michael Board, that's Gordy Leach on the outs on next to Angry there. They were both in Rose Tattoo, and I don't recognize the other names. I apologize, but there's 7 songs, and they were kind of a singing group, 70s kind of little psychedelic, dancey, rocky kind of. And meanwhile, Bon was in Fraternity, a
Yeah.
band called Fraternity, I believe.
Yeah.
So if Jailbreak 74 is AC/DC's first sort of foray, and I know they had a different drummer, AC/DC had a different drummer before Phil, and bass player Mark Evans was in AC/DC, who ironically is now in the current lineup of Rose Tattoo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy
Yeah.
turn. Yeah.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, thanks to Michael Board. I haven't opened it yet, but I already kind of know what to expect. One of our listeners who's in Australia, and I'm sorry I don't have the name on hand, sent me a clip of a Buster Brown song. And one, I don't know if you saw that in our comments.
Yeah.
He sent a Buster Brown link to a song.
Oh man, what is that guy's name? Because he's very active on our comment boards, and he's a
Yeah, I feel terrible that I don't remember the guy's name, but
yeah. I don't have my phone in front of me to look it up.
I'm
Uh,
sure that he's going to be understanding to our follies here.
yeah,
Also, my buddy Michael Board in Minnesota, randomly, the next like few days went by. It's not my birthday. Christmas was half a year ago. He sends me this little Motorhead bust,
oh,
which
nice.
is like a handmade talisman of some sort that
Yeah,
looks like he could have gotten out of like an art fair, but it is pretty detailed for some kind of resin mold.
that is
It's
cool.
it's pretty awesome. It's kind of a brown resin, and it's basically a little pillar with the Motorhead War Pig on it. Anyway, Michael Board, bless your rock and roll soul, my friend.
Hold on,
Thank
I'm gonna pull that name from Australia because he's a
Sure,
he's a great fan of ours,
sure.
and he comments and really enjoys the show. And I want to say his name is Rod Atkins or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right. That
And
sounds right.
I'm looking.
It's worth it to take the time to find the gent's name and make sure we say it correct one time at least.
Yeah. And if we don't get him this time, we'll have to get him next time. For some
Yeah,
reason, I
that's
want to
that's
say
fine. That's fine.
some
But
reason I said
on that note, while you scroll, I think that it's incredibly um, beyond when, like, your friends, uh, well, people like us, Dave, we'll like, I'm always turning you on to something. Like,
Right.
open your mail tomorrow. You're gonna you have something in the mail tomorrow.
I'm
By
waiting
the
for that.
Yeah. So then that's like a normal thing. I mean, we're not trading cassettes, with licking stamps anymore, but the rock and roll community is this close knit of I don't even want to say yay, happy birthday, like it's I did this for you because of there's a reason, it's the season, right?
Yeah,
No, it's Christmas every day in heavy metal land. you know
exactly.
people are still very, very open to the idea of making sure that we're thinking about you, and here's a Motorhead bust.
Yeah.
Hey, do you
I
have
got
the
it.
new t-shirt from my new band? Hey, here's one. I'll drop it in the mail for you. This is a normal thing. So thank you everyone who keeps doing that for each other.
I got it. His name is Rod Maddox. Rod, all the way from Australia. He is a fan of the show, and we appreciate him, and we appreciate him commenting and posting and listening and sharing and all that good stuff.
Yes.
He's also a subscriber. We love
Yes.
subscribers. Also, real quick before we wrap up, I think we should say a quick shout out, happy birthday to Rex Rogers, another one of our fans, friends, listeners, subscribers. Rex is very active on our comment boards, and we
Yes,
love
he's
it.
one of the royal loyal.
Yeah, Royal Loyal. I like that. He's got a
Thank
birthday on May 27th. I don't know when he'll actually hear this episode, but we wanted to give a shout out and a happy birthday to Rex Rogers, and thank you for your support. And with that, I think we should wrap up this episode. Jason's been a lot of fun talking tapes,
Love it.
tape trading, Armored Saint, The Decade That Rocked, Mark Wise's book, all good stuff. We'll leave it at that for this episode. We'll see you next time. Meantime, again, hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel. Leave us your likes and comments. Check out our website, talklouderpodcast.com. You can find coffee mugs, t-shirts, and check out our bios. And there's also a photo gallery up now. If you have bought a t-shirt or a coffee mug, send a photo to our Facebook page and we'll post that. We love seeing that stuff. All right. Until
Or
next time.
if you stole a t-shirt or stole a coffee mug, take a picture of it and send it.
Hey, whatever gets the word out.
That's right, man.
All right. I'm Metal Dave Glessner. Thank you, friends, for listening to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast. On behalf of myself and my co host, Jason McMaster, we will see you next time.